know, sometimes the biggest stories aren't about the players everyone is talking about. Every now and then, someone quietly puts in the work behind the scenes, and before you know it, they're ready to surprise everybody. That's exactly the kind of situation Seahawks fans should be paying attention to right now, because there are some really exciting signs that something special could be developing. And once you hear what's been happening, you'll understand why so many people are starting to believe this could be a huge storyline for Seattle this season. Before we get into it, make sure to hit that like button, and down in the comments, let me know by writing "Go Hawks" if you believe the future is looking bright for this team. Riley Mills is suddenly becoming one of the most talked-about young players inside the Seattle Seahawks, and the latest discussion surrounding him is starting to build serious momentum after ESPN identified him as Seattle's breakout candidate. That is a bold statement considering how little fans actually got to see from him during the 2025 season. But once you dig into everything that happened, it becomes much easier to understand why expectations are climbing so quickly. His rookie year was never supposed to be judged by traditional production because he entered the league while recovering from a torn ACL. Simply getting back onto the field became the first victory, and everything that happened after that only added more excitement about what could be coming next. Instead of shutting things down completely and waiting for another season to make his debut, Mills fought his way back into action. That decision alone says plenty about the kind of competitor Seattle believes they have. Many players in that situation would have focused entirely on recovery and targeted the following year as their real starting point. Mills took a different path. He worked through the rehabilitation process, earned an opportunity to suit up, and eventually made it onto the field during one of the biggest moments imaginable. What made that return even more impressive was the impact he managed to create despite extremely limited playing time. His snap count remained small because the Seahawks were competing in meaningful games, leaving very little room to slowly ease a recovering rookie into action. Every snap mattered, every opportunity carried weight, and yet Mills still found a way to stand out. One of the biggest moments came when he recorded a sack during the Super Bowl. For a player who had barely seen the field throughout the season because of injury recovery, producing a play like that immediately caught attention. It wasn't about piling up statistics over months of football. It was about showing flashes that suggested there could be much more waiting beneath the surface once he finally receives a full workload. Seattle only had a handful of opportunities to put Mills on the field. His appearances came against the Colts, Rams, Panthers, and 49ers during the regular season before postseason games against the 49ers, Rams, and New England Patriots. Those were not meaningless situations where coaches could freely experiment. Every game carried significance, meaning the coaching staff had to believe Mills was capable of helping the team before inserting him into the rotation. That confidence alone speaks volumes. Even beyond the production, the circumstances surrounding his return deserve attention. Recovering from a serious knee injury is never simple, especially for a defensive lineman whose position depends on explosion, leverage, balance, and power. Mills wasn't only trying to prove he belonged in the NFL, he also needed to trust his own body again after such a significant setback. Every snap represented another step toward regaining that confidence, and according to the discussion surrounding him now, Seattle believes those early flashes were enough to hint at something much bigger. The excitement doesn't stop with what happened during games. Reports surrounding Mills throughout the offseason have only increased optimism. Observers have highlighted the workouts being shared across social media, with Mills consistently appearing stronger, healthier, and far more explosive than he looked while working his way back from injury. That has fueled even more anticipation, because the version of Mills that briefly appeared during 2025 was still recovering. If those flashes happened before reaching full strength, many now wonder what kind of player Seattle could be getting with a completely healthy offseason behind him. ESPN's argument for naming Mills the Seahawks' breakout player extends beyond individual talent. It also reflects the current makeup of Seattle's defensive front. While the defensive line remains filled with experienced veterans, it is also becoming an older position group. Leonard Williams enters the final year of his contract at age 32, while Jarran Reed is 33. On the edge, DeMarcus Lawrence is 34 and has previously considered retirement. Uchenna Nwosu is 29, and Dante Fowler Jr., who joined on a one-year deal, is 31. Those players continue to bring valuable experience, but they also highlight why Seattle needs younger contributors ready to step forward. That is where Riley Mills becomes such an intriguing piece of the puzzle. The Seahawks are not simply looking for someone who can contribute immediately. They are looking for someone capable of strengthening both the current rotation and the future foundation of the defensive line. According to ESPN's assessment, the emergence of another young defender could significantly improve Seattle's immediate depth while also helping secure the long-term outlook of the position group. There are already promising young names on the defensive front. Derek Hall has shown encouraging development, while Byron Murphy continues progressing as another important building block. Mills now has an opportunity to join that emerging group. Together, they could represent the next wave of defensive linemen in Mike Macdonald's system. Rather than relying exclusively on veteran leadership every season, Seattle has a chance to gradually transition toward younger talent without sacrificing competitiveness. That transition matters because building sustained success requires more than finding veterans every offseason. Teams eventually need younger players who can grow into major roles while remaining affordable and productive. Mills enters this conversation at exactly the right moment. Instead of being asked to immediately replace experienced veterans, he can continue developing while learning alongside them. That environment could prove invaluable if his early flashes truly become consistent production over an entire season. Another reason people inside and around Seattle remain excited is the effort Mills reportedly brings every single day. Stories emerging from off-season practices paint the picture of a player who refuses to slow down. During one OTA session, Mills reportedly pushed so hard during what was intended to be a non-contact team drill that Mike Macdonald briefly sent him to the sideline. Rather than viewing that story negatively, many have interpreted it as evidence of the relentless motor he plays with. Coaches may occasionally need to dial back his intensity during practice situations, but few complain about having a defensive lineman whose natural instinct is to play every snap at maximum effort. That relentless style also fits the reputation Mills is beginning to build. Observers continue describing him as a grinder, someone committed to improving every aspect of his game while putting himself in the best possible position for success. After everything required just to recover from a torn ACL, that mindset becomes even more significant. The road back demanded patience, discipline, and constant work. And now, Seattle hopes all of that preparation begins paying off on Sunday. Perhaps the most exciting part of this entire discussion is that nobody believes fans have seen the best version of Riley Mills yet. The player who briefly flashed during 2025 was still recovering. The expectation now is centered around what happens once he enters a season completely healthy, fully confident in his knee, and able to participate from the very beginning instead of joining midway through the journey. If those expectations become reality, Seattle may have discovered another important piece for the future of its defensive front. The combination of perseverance, limited but impactful production, growing confidence from coaches, encouraging off-season reports, and the organization's need for younger defensive linemen has created genuine momentum around Riley Mills heading into the upcoming season. ESPN's breakout prediction has only intensified that conversation, and now all eyes will be on whether he can transform those promising flashes into consistent performances over a full year. If he does, Seattle could be looking at one of the biggest defensive success stories to emerge from its recent young core. What do you think? Can Riley Mills live up to the growing expectations and establish himself as one of the Seahawks' next cornerstone defensive linemen? If Mills reaches that level, the impact extends far beyond one individual player. Seattle would be adding another young contributor to a defensive front that already features promising talent, creating a foundation that could remain together for years instead of relying exclusively on veteran additions every offseason. That is exactly why his development has become such an important storyline. It is not only about replacing production whenever older players eventually move on. It is about proving that the organization can continue identifying, developing, and trusting young defensive linemen who fit Mike Macdonald's system. Another encouraging sign is that Mills has already demonstrated the mentality coaches love to see. Recovering from a torn ACL requires patience, discipline, and consistency, and everything surrounding him suggests he embraced that challenge instead of allowing it to slow his long-term progress. Reports throughout the offseason have repeatedly highlighted the work he has been putting in, with videos of his training continuing to circulate and fueling excitement among Seahawks followers. Every workout reinforces the belief that the player who briefly flashed late last season was only scratching the surface of what he can become once fully healthy. The story from organized team activities may have been one of the clearest examples of his approach. During a non-contact team period, Mills reportedly played with so much intensity that Mike Macdonald briefly sent him to the sideline for going too hard. While that may sound unusual at first, it also reveals the type of motor he brings every time he steps onto the field. Defensive linemen who consistently play with maximum effort are always valuable, and Mills appears determined to make every practice rep count, regardless of the setting. That relentless effort also matches what Seattle has already seen from him in games. Even with limited opportunities, he managed to make plays that stood out, and that is often what separates players who simply fill roster spots from players who eventually earn much larger roles. Production on a small number of snaps does not guarantee future success, but it certainly gives coaches a reason to keep expanding a player's responsibilities. If Mills continues building on those flashes throughout training camp and into the regular season, his role could naturally continue growing. The timing could not be more important. Seattle still benefits from experienced veterans leading the defensive front, but every organization eventually faces the challenge of transitioning from one generation to the next. The best teams avoid waiting until that transition becomes unavoidable. Instead, they gradually develop younger contributors while veterans are still around, allowing knowledge, experience, and leadership to be passed along naturally. Riley Mills has an opportunity to become part of exactly that process. ESPN selecting him as Seattle's breakout candidate reflects that combination of talent, opportunity, and organizational need. The physical tools appear to be there. The work ethic continues receiving praise. The coaching staff has already shown confidence by putting him on the field in meaningful situations after his recovery. Now comes the next step, proving he can sustain that level over the course of an entire healthy season. There will undoubtedly be high expectations, but there is also plenty of reason for optimism based strictly on what has already been shown. The flashes were real. The effort has been visible. The recovery process is behind him. The Seahawks now have a chance to see what Riley Mills looks like without the limitations that defined his first season in the league. If everything comes together, Seattle may not simply have another rotational defensive lineman. They could have a player capable of becoming an important piece of the defense for years to come while helping strengthen the next generation of talent on the defensive front. That possibility is exactly why so many people are paying close attention to his progress heading into the upcoming season. As training camp and the regular season approach, Riley Mills will have every opportunity to show that the excitement surrounding him is justified. The combination of perseverance, flashes of impact, relentless effort, and growing confidence from those around the organization has positioned him as one of the most intriguing young players on Seattle's roster. Now it becomes his chance to turn potential into consistent production and prove that ESPN's prediction was more than just off-season optimism. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the latest Seahawks news. Leave a like if you're excited to watch Riley Mills this season, and be sure to click the video that's on your screen for even more Seahawks coverage. The fastest updates and the latest news will always be right here.